What's the most horrific act committed by someone you know personally? My father beat the shit out of my mother and myself when I was a toddler. I have an uneven skull because of it. Until I found out, I thought it was a birth defect. I didn't find this out from my mother until I was an adult when I had to take him to court because he had opened numerous credit cards with my social security number when I was a kid and had tanked my credit by the time I was 18. One of my childhood friends was diagnosed as schizophrenic in his early 20s, went off his meds for a bit of time, and had an episode. Bludgeoned his mom to death, who was my parents' friend. They found him in a fetal position, crying and not understanding what happened. He committed suicide a few years later while in jail. I lived down the road from Terry Joe Volner. He rode my bus every day and was also a violent, horrible person. He murdered a 5-year-old because he had feelings for the kid's mom, and I guess she didn't feel the same. So he murdered one of her kids, took a picture of the child's body, and sent it to the child's mom, and told her he was going to kill her other kids, that he was babysitting if she didn't come home right now. He got life. Then, he beat his cellmate to death with his bare hands so brutally they considered the death penalty. He got life again. Guy I knew from Sioux Falls. South Dakota was convicted of many counts of rape on a child. My kids had spent time to W him. He was a family friend, and they called him Uncle. I had suspicions and cut off contact. A couple years later, he was arrested and convicted. He was only interested in boys. My son swears this dude didn't touch him. I hope he rots. A guy I worked with was shacked up with a manager and drugged her drink one night so she'd pass out. He molested and tortured her very young son to death. Edit, just wanted to add that yes, he is in prison. It happened in Asheville, Canton, North Carolina, about November 12th-ish years ago. Guy's name is Will. Edit 2. Reading through all the comments when I woke up, I wanted to let y'all know that I was working at PetSmart, as were the above mentioned. When the news broke the next morning, we were all granted time off if we needed it, and they also provided us with counseling if we chose. My mother attempted suicide in front of me. She called me downstairs to witness her take a bottle of pills and then told me it was my fault. I was 9. Mom survived, but I've never been able to let that go. She still believes she's fine, and everyone else is the problem. I have compassion for her, but I can't have her in my life. I'm a 42-year-old mother, and I can't fathom doing that. Edit, I'm blown away by all of the upvotes and responses. Each and every single one of you is an inspiration, and I want all of the good in the world for each of you. When we were in school, this boy from our year, we were 13 years old or so at the time, was with his 2 older brothers and kidnapped a man. The man was dating their sister, and at that time, people were very protective if you dated someone's sister. They took him to a petrol station and covered him in petrol. They then took him to a forest and burnt him alive. All 3 brothers went to prison, but since they were minors, I don't think they got that many years. When I was 21, 22nd, I bump into the guy from my year in a takeaway, and he tells me he's working at the local supermarket. A few months later, I end up working in that same supermarket, and he goes to me, anyone messes with you, let me know. I'm thinking, nah, I don't want them dead in a forest. Guy I went to school with was real calm, very smart, and everyone loved him. He was a gentle person from what I remember. He had lost his mom a couple years before this. She was a nurse, and they found her dead in a hospital room during her shift. Unknown causes. Our senior year of high school, dude is a championship wrestler, dominating his grades, and just doing good. He lived with his dad, who was a police officer for years and years. At lunch one day, he left school and came back. Everything was normal, and the day was finished out. His dad did not show up for work that evening, and the police department sent someone to go knock on his door. They found the house ransacked and his dad lying in bed with a single gunshot wound to the head, deceased. Later that night, they called my grandmother in for questioning because she cleaned their house once a week. Not much later than that, the guy I went to school with broke down and confessed he had come home on lunch to ask for money, and he and his dad got in an argument. His dad laid down like normal for his shift, and he took his dad's service pistol and shot him, and after realizing what he'd done, he'd freaked out and turned the house upside down to make it look like a robbery, then went and finished the day at school to try to make it seem like he had no clue what had happened. Shocked everyone. I only met him once as a kid, but my granddad's brother-in-law. He approached me and my mom in a cafe, I was 8, and tried starting normal conversational small talk. My mom panicked and asked him what the hell he was doing out of prison. He brushed her question off, and he knelt down to talk to me, which made my mom pick me up, sling me over her shoulder, and run back to the car. I just remember being so scared by her sudden moves, I quietly burst into tears in the car, and we drove halfway home. Mom then stopped in a supermarket car park, got in the back, unbuckled me, and we cuddled in the back for what felt like days. most likely an hour tops, whilst we both cried. I had no clue what was happening, but Mum calmed me down and she kept saying, "You're safe, I love you," over and over. I found out years later he slit my granddad's sister, his wife's, throat and brutally beat her to death, hence my mum's fear. My sister's friend's mom, her boyfriend, and the mom's cousin all killed my sister's friend in such a horrific way. They strangled her, sexually assaulted her, dismembered her, and burned her body in the bathroom tub, all on the girl's 10th birthday. Weeks before this happened, the mom and the little girl came to my sister's 10th birthday party and met our whole family. We had pictures of them on Facebook, and my sister even almost stayed over for the night. Horrible. Our local news is currently showing live videos of the trial for the 3 that murdered her. I cannot watch it, and I do not want my sister watching it because she is still too young to know what happened to her friend. I've been trying to protect her and make sure that she doesn't find out more than what we've told, which is that she has passed away. Hearing it, our news literally breaks my heart. Edit. I don't follow the news much on her case. I tried watching the live trial videos and it was far too graphic for me. I wish nothing but the best for her family that actually loved and cared for her. I hope she gets the justice she deserves. My sister, 15, soon to be 16, knows a little about her case, but I think she's also afraid to know what truly happened. She knows something bad happened from the mom, boyfriend, and cousin. She doesn't talk to us much about her. For those of you suggesting I speak with sister about it, I did, and she broke down into tears. She knows and understands that what happened was horrible. She said she doesn't want to know, that a video she watched a few years ago was even too much for her to process. I've never seen her cry so hard. It just totally broke my heart seeing her mourn her friend. A friend in college, graduate student while I was undergraduate, back in the early 2000s, suffered from schizophrenia, but was well controlled on meds. Long story short, his student insurance stopped covering his meds, and he was unable to get in to see a psyche before he ran out. Out of pocket was nearly $1,000 a month. He tried rationing meds but declined rapidly, and he and his mom spent 3 days frantically trying to find an inpatient bed in a psyche unit that could take him. I know that he was very worried that he would hurt somebody and could feel himself slipping away. On the 4th day, he shot and killed his pregnant wife. He then tried to kill himself, but succeeded only in shooting off his own lower jaw. Thing is that when his head was right, he was such a good guy, and he was so excited to be a dad. It was all he talked about some days. That, and he loved his wife like crazy. Always talked about how out of his league she was and how lucky he was. As far as I know, he's still in jail, still has no mandible, and, now that he's back on meds, is fully cognizant of what he's done. I cannot imagine his grief and guilt. I guess instead of looking for a hospital bed, he should have just gotten himself arrested. Our US mental health system, if you can even call it that, is a very, very bad joke. Edit. He didn't decline in just 3 days. Best I can tell, it was more like 3 weeks. Towards the end, he and his mom were trying to find him an inpatient bed because just restarting meds wasn't going to fix things once he had declined that much. What I know, I learned from talking to his mother afterwards, so there are big gaps in my knowledge. He wasn't able to speak at that point and transferred directly to jail once he was well enough. Edit. A few folks have implied this is a fabricated story. That's fine and up to you. I did dig a little and found a new story from when it happened. It's a little short on details, but the gist is there. Edit : I didn't expect so much response. I'm at work now, but I'll try to reply to as many responses as I can tonight. A friend was brutally murdered a few years back. Due to my relationship with him and having met his assailant a few times, I cooperated with investigators. I was privy to details not released to the press or initial public records. They didn't just stab him to death, he was tortured. Then they took cash advances at his bank's ATMs to go on a drug spree. Drove his beloved Mustang all over, then partied in his house for a few days. The victim was gay, and their murderer immediately tried to pin his disappearance on a soldier he was seeing. Unfortunately, the stench of decay prompted police to get a search warrant. MFer had the receipt in his pocket for the container he'd bought for my friend's body. I still can't walk down a storage solutions aisle. All I can think about is what size bin would accommodate someone my friend's size. Dude had a rap sheet and a public defender, ended up doing a plea deal, will be locked up for at least a few decades, with good behavior. He should never even hope of seeing the light of day after he butchered someone like an animal. then hung out in the next room like it was nothing. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.